Hello, everyone, and welcome to U Sports Conversations. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue aux Conversations U Sport. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers for you today, and together we will examine the intersection between race and sports in honor of Black History Month. Today, you will hear the stories and experiences of 4 U Sports student athletes from across all 4 of our conferences, as well as 2 highly influential members of our community. Nous avons une série d'invités fantastiques pour vous aujourd'hui, et ensemble, nous allons examiner l'intersection de la race et du sport en l'honneur du mois de l'histoire des Noirs. Aujourd'hui, vous entendrez les histoires et les expériences de 4 étudiants athlètes de e-sport dans nos 4 associations, ainsi que 2 membres très influents de notre communauté. My name is Alicia Brown, and I am the Manager of Marketing and Communications at U Sports. I am a former Varsity Blue, shout out to U of T, and a 2-time Olympian. On behalf of U Sports and our membership, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today, as we commit to listening, learning, and advocating for positive change. Au nom de U Sport et de nos membres, je désire vous remercier de partager votre temps avec nous aujourd'hui, alors que nous engageons à écouter, à apprendre et à faire valoir les changements positifs. Before we start, I wish to acknowledge this land on which U Sports operates. Richmond Hill is situated on lands covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. Over several centuries, Richmond Hill has been traversed by many First Nations and is currently home of Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. And we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. I acknowledge that we are joined together today from all across Canada, and I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the land you call home. Je reconnais que nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui de partout au Canada, et je vous invite à prendre un instant pour réfléchir au territoire où vous résidez. Now, it's almost time to bring out our host, and I'm very excited for you all to meet her. But first, I'd like to remind everyone to practice kindness, patience, and empathy when others are sharing their stories and experiences today. Je désire vous rappeler de faire preuve de bonté, de patience et d'empathie quand d'autres partagent leur histoire et leur expérience. Throughout our time together, we invite you to reflect on your experiences and perspectives and encourage you to hold space for any feelings or emotions that may arise. We value your help in creating a safe space to build community, connection, and understanding. Inappropriate language or behavior will not be tolerated. Nous valorisons votre aide dans la création d'un espace sécuritaire pour bâtir une communauté, une connexion et une compréhension. Le langage ou des comportements inappropriés ne seront pas tolérés. So if you're ready, let's bring out your host, Karel Edwards-Perry. Karel is a biracial and bilingual woman. She is a former professional 100-meter hurdler and a 5-time Team Canada member. As a professional athlete who has experienced both the empowering and oppressive aspects of sport culture, Karel became a licensed mental health counselor associate and mental performance consultant to normalize taking care of our mental health and to help people overcome the mental barriers of their well-being. Karel Edwards-Perry est une ancienne coureuse professionnelle et 5 fois membre d'équipe Canada. Comme athlète professionnelle, expérimentée dans les aspects de l'habilitation et de l'oppression de la culture du sport, Karel est devenue conseillère associée agréée en santé mentale et consultante en performance mentale afin de normaliser les soins en santé mentale. Karel owns a counseling and consulting practice called Embrace Your Pace Performance, where she works with athletes of all levels. Karel is also a board member of the REX Project, an organization aimed at educating and empowering athletes to end abuse in sports. Karel dirige le cabinet conseil Embrace Your Pace Performance, où elle travaille avec des athlètes de tous les niveaux. So please join me in welcoming Karel Edwards-Perry to the stage.
Thank you, Alicia. Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here to facilitate this really important conversation. And it's my pleasure to introduce the 4 athletes for the first panel tonight. Donc, c'est avec plaisir que je vous présente les athlètes membres du premier panel ce soir. Donc, to start, we have Iseyemi, University of Acadia, oh my God, I can't say it. Acadia women's basketball. I got it. We then have Ismail Sow, Université de Montréal, soccer masculin. Salut. We then have Elijah Roberts, Toronto Metropolitan University, men's hockey. Hi. And lastly, we have Asia C, University of British Columbia, Okanagan, women's volleyball. Hi, everyone, and welcome.
How's it going?
We're going to jump right in. We have a lot to talk about. So the first thing I want to know is that you all are playing different sports. And so I'm curious, how did you choose the sport that you're playing? And does being Black impact the sport that you chose? And we can start with Ismail, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. The reason I play soccer, football, as the rest of the world calls it, is like my father, who is Senegalese. You know, as we were kids, me and my brother didn't really have a choice. As soon as we could walk, we were kicking a ball around. So it kind of just fell naturally into that path. But then now that you mention it, me being Black, I kind of had immigrant friends growing up, and at school, at recess, that was kind of the sport that everybody gravitated towards. All my friends were gravitating towards. So I think it did play a part in me, like continuing through like my teenage years and all that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Lizzie, I'm curious, as a basketball player, where there's a lot of representation in the Black community, what was it like for you to choose basketball?
I'd say it definitely came from watching my brothers play basketball at a young age and like just being around basketball from pretty early on. Like a lot of my cousins, a lot of my family were like having big like history playing basketball. So it kind of just fell in line for me to also like follow suit. And like I enjoyed watching and I enjoyed playing. So it kind of was an easy decision to like keep going with it.
Awesome. So for both you, Lizzie and Ismail, it sounds like family was a big component to why you chose your sport. Asia and Elijah, I'm curious, both of you are in sports that are considered to be predominantly more white. And so what was that like, and what was your path to choosing your respective sport? Asia, we can go with you if you want.
Yeah, mine was kind of very not family influenced, I would say. I'm an only child, so I didn't really have any siblings to kind of follow, although I would have loved that. I probably wouldn't have when I was a kid, but looking back, I totally would have. But yeah, for me, it was just something that I could do kind of outside of what all of my other friends were doing. And also just, I don't know, I just started playing in 6th grade, and then I'd moved to Michigan when I was in 7th grade, and the sports culture there, kind of Lansing, Michigan area, that's the capital for people who aren't familiar with that area. The sports culture there is really, really big, especially with MSU being there. So I kind of just fell in love with it there, and then came back to Canada, and that's just how it went for me.
Okay. What did you ever notice the lack of representation in the sport, and when did that shift happen for you where you were more aware about that?
Yeah, I guess you want me to answer the second half of the question. So, yeah, for me, I feel like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, living in Michigan, it was a completely different vibe, like completely different amount of Black people there, period. But definitely coming back to Canada, it absolutely was just me. It's always usually just been me on my teams. And whenever I have like a fellow marginalized teammate, no matter who they are, I'm like, wow, this is unique and weird for me. So yeah, it's mostly usually just me.
Okay. Thanks. Elijah, can you relate to that?
Yeah. For me, nobody in my family really played hockey. I just had one older cousin, Austin Corrado, who played, but my family grew up playing soccer, basketball, track and field. So it was a little bit of a unique, different path for me, but I saw my cousin play and instantly wanted to play. And then I just kind of fell in love with hockey and knew that I wanted to play. But like Aja said, like every time you go to a team, usually you're just the only Black player on the team. So it's an adjustment. I think that was something I noticed from probably my first or second year playing hockey. Fortunate enough for me, I always had one really close friend, my best friend today, who was on my team, Dante Sheriff, who was another Black player. But other than that, a lot of the time, like you go to a new team and you're the only Black player there. So it's definitely an adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how has the lack of representation in both your sports, Aja and Elijah, impacted kind of your experience in sports and just future career aspirations as well?
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of always felt like I have to prove myself a little bit more. It's things that you don't necessarily pay attention to as a kid, but little things like people kind of look at you as the Black player instead of just another player on the team. They treat you a little bit different. Whether it's intentional or not, I think it just naturally happens because you are different than everyone. And as you get older, you start to hear a little bit more racist things, or you read media and see some of the experience that other people have gone through. And, it kind of just opens your eyes a little bit to a little bit more to it. And, you start to try and learn and gain a little bit of awareness.
Absolutely. Aja, can you relate to anything Elijah's saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, absolutely, you're being looked at more as a Black player than just another player. And that's not something that I'm necessarily like, yeah, look at me as a Black player. Like, I'm Black, period. But it's more just like, also like interesting how the coaches kind of perceive you. Like it's kind of like a running joke between Black volleyball players that if you're Black and a girl, you're going to be a middle. And it's funny because I'm a middle, which is, there you go. And a lot of my fellow Black peers are middles. But yeah, it's kind of interesting just to see how your race will influence your whole entire career. And yeah, so it's definitely a thing, but it's nothing we're not used to over here in BC. Very small percentage of Black people over here. So
yeah. Okay, now I'm curious though. Who decided that you would be a middle?
Oh God. Okay. Well, not me. It definitely wasn't me, because I'm sure if you ask most middles, they don't love it because it's definitely a lot of work. I mean, I love it now, but I didn't initially want that for myself. The time that I was officially put in the middle, I was in 10th grade, and it was by my club coach. And you know what? Like, I totally believe that I belong there as a player, but I do think, of course, a part of me thinks I could have been a left side, but again, all middles think that. So, and that's what I was playing for those years before. So it's interesting to see. And, but yeah, 10th grade was when my fate was decided.
Okay. All right. Lizzie and Isaiah, we'll come back to you. Being in a sport that's a bit more diverse, tell us about that experience, and can you relate to what Asia and Elijah are saying, or was your experience different?
I mean, me, we both waited. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I could definitely relate to the part where Asia was talking about how like eventually like things do catch up to you and you do get kind of like pigeonholed at some point. Like I found like growing up, people were more so trying to get me to be like a post player and like they always want to be in the post and like that wasn't really my thing. I felt like I'm not really good in the post, like put me somewhere else, I can be better somewhere else. So it's just hard trying to figure out like where I should have been and where people thought I should be. And to go back to like the first part of the question, like I found it to be like since it is a diverse sport, like it depends on the team for the most part. Like growing up, I was on like pretty much like black dominated teams, like because I was in my community, like North Preston, that's where I'm from. And then as like the years went on and like some people started dropping out of the sport, that's when it became more like white oriented. Like I'd say in junior high, I was pretty much playing on all like white teams, to be honest. So
yeah. So what was the impact? How did that shift your experience?
it was definitely a big adjustment to what I was used to, for sure. Like just like the way you carry on with each other, the way you engage with like the coaching, the coaches, the way the coaches engage with the parents, and like it's just like stuff that it builds up, and it's not as noticeable like Elijah was saying to begin with, but like as you look back on it, like you start to wonder like why did he say that to me that way, or like why was this said to me about my mom or something like that. Just little things like that just kind of became more noticeable, I guess, as it went on.
Yeah, absolutely. You become more aware of that and start questioning things for sure. Ismail, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it pretty shocking that we all kind of have that story. As I was like, when I was younger, I used to play 10, which is more of like a creative role in a team. So it's really more offensive, a little bit more freedom. And I think when I was 16, I changed teams. And in that new team, I started going backwards and going more defensive roles, and which is where usually the same thing as Asia. I think there's kind of like a joke where it's like if you're playing six, you usually have like six is the defensive midfielder. Usually, if you're black, you're playing like six or center back, and now I am a center back. You know, I kind of just went backwards and backwards and backwards until I found myself there. And I hadn't really thought about it that much until just hearing all these stories of everybody having kind of a similar, like kind of getting guided into what your coaches expect out of you. But yeah, I think there's definitely like an inherent bias from everybody that if you're black, you have kind of like you're physically gifted. You know, I think that's like the natural like path people go to is you're physically gifted, and I think that also kind of takes away from the fact that you know we all train incredibly hard, and just saying that oh you're naturally physically gifted kind of just removes value from all the work you've been putting the same work as everybody else. It's not. I don't know, just placing it on your genetics is kind of like an easy cop out, but yeah.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up. It sounds like for all of you, even though some sports have been more diverse, but all of you have been in a team or on a team where you were one of the only one, if not the only one, right? And how that's impacted you throughout the years. So thank you for sharing that. Have you, I'm assuming, based on what you've shared, right, that you faced some racism and discrimination. And so if you're open to discussing that a little bit, we'll just, about Elijah, you can go first if you want.
Yeah, I think, you know, if it was 40 years ago, there wouldn't even be a question. I think all of us would have experienced that. And even now, we probably all still have. And hopefully 20 years from now, when these conversations happen, that everybody's saying no, they haven't. For me, I think it was more things that were maybe like behind the scenes. I think people were maybe a little scared to say things because they didn't want to be that person. One thing that I had happen, and I don't think it was like intentional for other people, but people always used to kind of call me PK Subban or compare my game to him. I think just because I was black. Like, sure, we played maybe a bit of a similar style, but I would kind of be at the rink sometimes at 13 years old, and people would like kind of call me PK and stuff like that. And I don't think that was intentional. But But the fact that that's just simply because I'm Black, they're not looking at my skills or anything else, was something that kind of stuck out. And then I think also in hockey, it is a pretty physical sport, a sport where you're allowed to fight. And I found like the friends that I have who fight a little more or kind of play that rough, gritty style of game, they're the ones who get a lot more like racist remarks towards them. So I've been pretty fortunate enough throughout my entire career to not really have anything like that. I always kind of look back and go, okay, I've been on how many teams with 20 people a team? Did I probably play with some racist players or play against? Probably, for sure. But I think there's not a lot of it that really happened in my face that I can kind of remember.
Okay. Which, when you talk about intent, I mean, the intent cannot be there, but doesn't mean that they didn't cause harm, right? And when we talk about racism, sounds like you were fortunate enough not to have overt racism, but we talk about covert racism or microaggressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think what you referred to at the beginning of this conversation of like all the little things that we don't really think about, but then you go back and you're like, right?
Yeah. Well, even based on that, like I had a player that I played with in the past kind of reach out to me down the road, and he was like, sorry if like anything I said was like a little bit like offense or whatever. Like I honestly just didn't know. And for me, that was kind of a testament to like how we're evolving as like a sports world and people are starting to learn. Because I generally believe he just didn't necessarily know what he was doing, what wasn't right, but he was able to kind of reflect back and learn and try and make up for it. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is that, not everybody's going to know things. There's some things that you should know, but if we kind of continue educating people and trying our best to, just keep people woke on what's happening so we can avoid those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to come back to education, that piece. And so I'm going to hold on to what you just shared because I think it's going to be important later on. But thank you for sharing that. Anybody else wants to share in terms of the experiences they face, either racism, discrimination in the sports world?
No? I mean, I haven't personally faced anything. I know there was like kind of a big big incident in Quebec in the soccer world, I think last year or 2 years ago, where a player used like some pretty crazy language, but then, right away got suspended, I think for indefinitely, I think. So, yeah, I mean, me personally, never, but I know it happens. And if it's not you, it's somebody, so.
Right. And actually that brings me to a good question too of what would you tell someone, maybe a younger athlete who might be experiencing that right now? How do you help them navigate those instances?
I would say like, don't be afraid to speak up. Like you're not going to cause wave. If it's like a teammate or something like that, like you're not going to disrupt team harmony. Like that person is already responsible for whatever they're saying or whatever they're doing. Like I feel like there might be some guilt or something that, especially if you're the only one on the team, you don't want to stand out more than you already do. So I would say throw that out the window. Like if somebody's saying something that's making you feel uncomfortable, don't be scared to address it. Go tell your coaches, go tell the supervisors or whatever. Yeah, hopefully it gets dealt with as fast as this incident I was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else has kind of advice of what they would tell maybe a younger version of you who is struggling with this?
I definitely do. I feel like if I have a whole novel worth of things I could go back and tell myself, and I wish that I could, but I guess you got to learn the hard way sometimes, and that's how it is. I mean, for me, I think, Ismail, it's really interesting to hear you say that because I feel like almost for me, I would say, make sure you know who you trust. I almost think, kind of a thing. Like you really have to be careful with the people that you can trust, and you really have to be like a self-reflective kind of person. And it's not kind of like be skeptical, like be scared of everyone, but like, and it's not like a kind of know your place thing because your place is whatever you make it. But for me, it would definitely just be to be very aware of the people around me and the people I can trust and the people that are truly going to be there for me at the end of the day when it all comes down to it. Just because you know, I've had those experiences of racism, like maybe not like overtly to my face kind of things, but similar to, they're just as you know, important and just as harmful. So I think that, and also, girl, it ain't gonna get easier, I would say to her, that little girl, I would say it ain't getting easier. You got to lock in. If you want to do this, you got to lock in and stay locked in, because people are not going to get nicer. People are not going to make it easier for you. So I think, you know, it's kind of like the hard facts, but it's what I would tell myself. But maybe that's just me.
No, but that's powerful. I'm happy you raised that. And Asia, I actually watched your pre-interview, so I got a bit of sense of where you're at. And I think you shared something about this idea of this rhetoric of like, Black folks are strong, right? And that can be harmful. And so whether it's you or someone else, I actually want to talk about that of, do you think it's harmful to have that rhetoric, to have that narrative for Black folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I absolutely do. I think it's completely harmful. I think there's obviously, and I think a lot of why this kind of rhetoric is still in place is because a lot of people, it's easily said, oh, well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, you know, it's a good thing that people think that you're a hard worker and that you're strong and that you're not emotional and that you're rock solid, you don't need support. But it's also, it's kind of the same thing. You could put a nice fluffy spin on anything like that. Because if you really kind of see, it's those harmful rhetorics are the expectations we're putting on ourselves. And when it's coming from the inside out, I feel like it's almost doing more harm than coming from the outside in.
Mm. That's powerful. Lizzie, I saw you kind of wanted to jump in, so I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I was gonna say is very harmful because like instead of seeing you as a person, it just sees you as like a figure or like an item, or just objectifies you in a sense of like, this is how you should be, this is how I expect you to be, and if you are not that, then like I don't really think you're living up to your full potential or your standard and stuff like that. So I feel like once you get pegged with having this strong like character to you, it's really, really hard to like try and fall from grace in a sense, because everyone's always going to be expecting you to be on top, being like on your game at all times, and that's really hard to maintain.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think that goes to this idea of Asia, right? You're saying it doesn't get easier, it only continues. And you're having to continue with this front and not tapping into your emotions and not getting the support that you need. And so I would be remiss as a mental health counselor if I didn't ask all of you the impact that some of this of being Black, a student athlete, being Black in other spaces have had on not only your performance, but also as a human, on your mental well-being and mental health.
Yeah, I guess I'll start there. Honestly, it has an effect, and it would almost be impossible not for it to. I found the biggest thing for me is kind of just setting up a really good support system, whether that's your parents or your friends, or even reach out to someone who you know has been through this stuff in the past. I found I have a podcast with Akil Thomas and Kwame Mason called So Nice, the podcast, and we kind of bring on like Black athletes and just Black people in sports to kind of share their story. And one of the things that we found is like a lot of people share similar stories. So kind of knowing like for your own mental being that like you're not the only one going through this. There's a lot more people than you think. And then also like being able to, like, we get emails and messages from parents saying how like their kids have some like racist incidents that go on. Can we talk to their kid to kind of boost their spirits or help them out? So I think just finding a great support system, like Asia said, it's not going to get easier as a kid. So having a great support system and not quitting. I know sometimes it might feel like it's the easy option to quit, but I think in the end, for me, kind of always like going out and performing at a high level was like a way for me to kind of silence all of the haters and racist people. So I think just stick with it, try and build up a strong support system, and don't be afraid to speak out.
Yeah, thank you. And I did want to touch on your podcast. I'm happy you brought that up. It seems like you're really committed to inspiring the next generation and of youth and Black youth to take on hockey. So briefly, do you want to tell us a bit more just of what you actually do to help others kind of forge that path for themselves?
Yeah, so Akil Thomas and I, we played together in Niagara in the OHL, and first we kind of wanted to just engage with the community in Niagara a little bit, figure out something to do, and we kind of just realized that there's a lot of Black players that were like us who maybe need some help and guidance or just need to hear stories. So we decided to settle on that kind of topic for a podcast, and we thought of who we knew that was kind of in media, and we partnered up with Kwame. So what we do is essentially, it's nothing crazy, but just it's almost just sharing stories and what people have been through. A little bit what we're doing right now is exactly what we would do. And I think for me, like the ultimate goal, it's not about like money or fame or anything like that. It's just like just trying to help one person, even if you help 100 people or help one person, that being that person that can help change somebody's life or give them the confidence or whatever it is that they need, was kind of my motivation behind it. And we've been able to see that we've affected a lot of people, and hoping that based on what we've done, we can continue to kind of get more Black players into playing hockey and other sports as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that work. I know you're definitely helping a lot of people.
Thank you.
Yeah. Someone else wants to talk about the impact on mental well-being, mental health.
Yeah, I could definitely. I feel like for me, it's been definitely like a path of discovery ever since I got here, for sure. I mean, obviously, in terms of like my training and compete, like it's definitely not been there just because of my injuries that I had on my first day getting here. And I kind of like to think of the injury I had on my first day of my rookie season as kind of a reflection of the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The perseverance I would need to kind of get through, because when you do your ACL, if you know anything about knees, like all of the knee stuff, it's going to take forever, and here I am 2.5 years later still on the grind. But I think in terms of just being a Black athlete, being one of two Black female athletes at my school, it's definitely been like incredibly hard on my mental health. But that being said, it's also been an incredible journey of discovering the things that I can do to, kind of silence those racist whisperings. So, just kind of insulating myself with a smaller group, I would say. And, I'm a journaler. I'm a mad journaler. I recommend everybody journals. Like that is a way that I discovered that changed everything. But and talking to people, like not being ashamed to say that I go to counseling and telling my friends I go to counseling, and kind of spreading those resources and just really normalizing that, because I think a lot of the pressure on Black people to be strong also comes from there not being enough support for us as Black people to not be strong. And so I think that just kind of looking at that side of it and embracing that side and spreading it to my peers has definitely been a nice kind of balance to that hardness on my mental health.
Absolutely. A couple things I want to hit on. First of all, we might have to connect after this. I was also injured my first day in college and then didn't run my whole collegiate career, but that's a story for another day. But love that you bring the counseling piece of it, right? And how there is still a very big stigma, especially in the Black community, to seek out help. And so the more folks can be open about it, the more you all can talk about it, whether it's on the podcast or here, I think that's really, really valuable. And so thank you for doing that. So we're talking support from family, from loved ones. I'm hearing counseling. I'm hearing isolating yourself with a trusted group of friends, something that feels safe. Anything else, Lizzie or Ismail, do you want to contribute to this part?
I mean, me personally, I think I've been very blessed in the environments that I've been in. I've very rarely been alone or felt alone, and I know I might be an exception. I think my sport does play a little bit into it, and I think the city I'm in as well. I'm in Montreal. We're very, very lucky. Super diverse. I mean, there's been like 2 or 3 years where I could see like more like black people in the locker room than white people, like so. I think if you are lucky like me, I think I would say just take advantage of it, and to kind of build that community, and that's what we had, like in the way that we celebrate, in the way that we laugh, in the way that we enjoy hanging out, and Black History Month was like a time for us to kind of like talk and get together and speak about like, oh, what can we change this year going forward, or like little things like that, just like taking advantage of the community you have around you, however big or small it may be, of kind of just like staying close, because as Asia says, you might not be able to trust everybody, but if there's somebody you're going to trust, it's the people around you who are kind of like similar. So trying to build that community as much as you can, I think helps a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy that that's been your experience, right? But it goes to show how important it is to have a good support system.
Yeah, 100%.
That actually leads me to kind of my next question in terms of, sometimes growth comes with discomfort. And I'm curious, Ismail, for you in this, I think you said that, again, I watched your pre-interview. And so I think you talked about how your team welcomes diversity and even celebrates it by having like your flags on your lockers and stuff. And so does that make it easier for you to have some of these uncomfortable conversations with other members of your team?
Yeah. When we see something that we don't like, we snuff it out really fast. Like the conversation that I brought up earlier, where people kind of have that inherent bias of, just because you're Black, that's why you're physically gifted. That was kind of drawn from something we had this year. Somebody kind of jokingly said, well, that's why, it's so easy for you to do the beep test, you're just naturally gifted. And very easily, we kind of just all gave each other that look like, and we explained to him like, no, this has nothing to do with it. You see us in training every day. We're running more than you, and that's why that's why we're beating you. So 100% it helps. 100% it helps, and I don't know what to say for all of you who are like in these faraway places who might not be as diverse. I would say really is just like trying to bring each other closer, because you're not completely alone, and trying to get as close as you can, because it really does make a difference.
Yeah. Merci, Ismail. Lizzie, I want to give you the floor. I mean, how do you find do you have uncomfortable conversations with others? And if so, how do you find them?
There are people singing outside, so I just want to give them a chance to go by. I don't know what that was. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Have you had to have these uncomfortable conversations? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah, I definitely say like my team this year has been like awesome with just like being open to having like courageous conversations and like just really being really acceptive towards like feedback and stuff. And I'm just gonna let them finish their song maybe, but okay, yeah, I think they're done. But I feel like definitely the George Floyd summer sparked a lot of conversation for like my team in general, and just like having conversations with one another and like seeing where people stood around like the issues and like whether they believed in like the movement and stuff like that just really was eye-opening, and it gave us like a platform to start engaging in those conversations more often. So I'd say we do talk about them, like the issues, and like I feel comfortable like bringing up any issues I have with the team, and they're all really like acceptive towards it and like responsive towards it. So it's pretty
good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Elijah, I know you have a new daughter, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm curious, it might be too early, but have you thought about how you're going to have these conversations with her?
Yeah, it's something, until it actually happens, you think about, but now that I have a daughter, it's something that I have to think about a little bit more. And I think for me, growing up, playing sports was always important, more for the social aspect and the life skills that you gain. But I think for me, she's still only 2 months. So between now and when she first plays sports, I can just try and educate myself as best as possible, because if I don't necessarily understand, then I can't even help her. So just having more like conversations like this, talking to women who have kind of experienced things like her, other Black women especially that have experienced things in their sports, and then just trying to use that to the best of my knowledge to help her. And then also understanding that there's some areas where just being a man, like I can't help her. So I might need to either bring in my sister or bring in like someone like one of you guys to explain, because as much as I can try and understand, I'm not a woman. So there's some things that I just might not understand.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that too. This how your intersecting identities, right, can have an impact. And so realizing that yes, you're Black, right, your daughter's Black, but the part that you can't relate to as well is that you have two different genders, and so knowing that that has a different impact on your daughter, absolutely. Asia, I know that you're passionate about advocating for this work, but you also mentioned that it's not your responsibility, right? And so how do you navigate that line? How do you define that line of like, I want to engage in this versus like, I need to protect myself right now?
Yeah, and it's definitely really hard to draw the line. And I also want to just kind of premise, like, when I say that, it's not like I have it all figured out right now. Like, I know how to be this person, this activist person, but then I also know how to tell people no, like, no, I don't. I'm still learning. I'm probably going to still be learning till I die. So for me, it's definitely a super hard role to navigate, especially when you're living in a majorly white town on a 100% white team surrounded by 100% white admin. Like, it's definitely like a hard role to have, especially because when you're the only one, people expect you to be the Black person. Like, you're the Black person for them. Like, oh, my cousin's Black. So you're like, what I'm trying to say is it's much more easy to be the token when there's one of you. But I think kind of embracing your tokenship, I call it. I kind of joke around with my mom about it. I'm like, am I really a token if I'm making myself the token? And yes, I am, but I'm doing that kind of with, like I said, like I mentioned before, with those tools that I have to protect myself and to insulate myself from kind of that outside trauma, because it is traumatizing. Like, the world does not, like, I just don't believe the world wants to see, they're preying on our downfall, like, seriously. And so I just feel like coping with that. I've found, as I get older, I find those ways to kind of insulate myself while still being able to outwardly kind of be active in the community. But also just reminding people that, yeah, like, this is not my responsibility. I'm doing you a favor by teaching you this. You could go get this from a book because I had to go through it. So, so that's kind of where I do. And sometimes people don't like to hear it, but those are the ones that I just don't be educating. So there you go.
There you go. So you know where to draw the line, right? But I mean, there's oftentimes this expectation that because we're Black, we need to educate, when really it's not our responsibility. But also, I appreciate that all of you are very passionate about also speaking up about it, right? And sharing your experiences. So, okay, switching gears a little bit. Do you think that your sports have given you a platform to create change? And if so, how? That might be a tough one, huh? Lizzie, go ahead.
Yeah, I can start. I'd say that being a Black woman playing basketball at this level right now is pretty rare. I can probably count on like both hands how many Black women there are in like our AUS conference alone. So I just feel like the platform I'm giving is just literally by being here, like physically, like being that point of representation for like younger girls in like Black communities. Like, you can come to university and play a sport, or you can just come to university, period, and succeed and be like, you can become something of yourself, to be honest, in a sense. So like, that's how I view my platform, and like, I'm trying my best to use it. Like, it's been something I'm trying to embrace more, I'd say. So yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah. And no, absolutely. So I mean, you're doing it by just setting an example and modeling it to other younger folks, right? I think you're also wanting to go into medicine. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Can
I
you
do.
briefly talk about that? Because I think that's good too.
Yeah, so I definitely I have a passion for medicine, and just basically, in a sense, I feel like Black community, it kind of plays into role how like Black people is like the stigma where we don't really take care of our health for the most part. Like, we tend to ignore our problems, and they tend to get worse as we ignore them. So I feel like going into medicine and just being like a Black person in medicine would be helpful for people to see, like, it's not like a scary thing, like they're not going to do you wrong, or it's not going to be like a scary thing to go and do. And just being able to be that person, or even like a person in like the medicine industry, in a sense, would be helpful to see that. So that's where my interest really comes from. And I feel like as a whole, like, Black people should be more taking care of themselves more often. So that's where it came from.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I know we're kind of running out of time, but briefly, anyone else want to speak to how your platform can create change?
Yeah, I think like just being a university athlete, we are put on like this platform. It is a bit of a privilege to be able to attend our schools and play, but with that it comes I'll speak for myself with TMU, like they've offered a lot of support on if there is things that we want to do. One of my teammates, he plays ball hockey with students after school on Mondays, and the platform of the school kind of allows him to do that. Like if there's a story that I want to get out there, I do have like the backing of other people and school support, and I can't speak about it too much right now because I'm still working on it, but using like the platform that I have, I am kind of trying to work on something where like all the support, guidance, all these things that we're talking about are available for people. So I can't speak on it too much right now. If you kind of follow me on whatever, you'll see that stuff kind of come out soon. But I think just being able to play sports at a high level for high level universities just instantly gives us that platform, and then it's up to us to do what we want with it. Some people decide they just want to go in, play, not say a word and do anything, but I think it'd kind of be a waste of my platform and opportunity that I've been given to just not do my best to try and help and advance the sport for Black players.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, go follow so we can all stay tuned with your news. So we'll be looking for that for sure. I'll use the last couple minutes, Asia and Ismail, give you the chance to speak one more time. What do you hope that people are walking away with from this talk? If there's one thing that you want people to hold on to leaving this conversation, what would it be?
I would like it to be kind of just awareness of what their actions can bring, whether intentional or not intentional. Because I think Elijah touched on it really, really early, where the actions of some people might not be like motivated to hurt you, but inherent biases that they carry do impact us. And like that story of changing positions to something that's more in your category, or whatever it may be that kind of brings you in this box. I think that it is really dangerous and really harmful long term for young Black athletes to kind of always be put in this box. So I think even if it's you're trying to do it in a positive light, you think it's going to help the player long term, just to be aware of it, that putting somebody in a predefined box will 100% have consequences. So I think that'd be what I would like.
Very well said. Thank you for that. That was very well said. Asia?
Yeah, I think for me, I would just love to say, educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. Do it for the people you love. Find out whose traditional land you're on, acknowledge it, and then go from there. That's what I would say. That's what I want people to do. If you know a Black person, ask yourself, why do I expect them to teach me about this? And then go and learn about it yourself, because there you go. It's up to you it's nobody's job to de-ignorant you, teach you, you could say, in English. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely. We're already doing the work just by being Black, so we don't need to do more work, right? But also knowing that it sounds like everyone is willing to have those conversations if someone approaches them in a way that they're open and wanting to learn. And if they're trusted and safe people, it sounds like all of you are open to having those discussions. But we're going to end here. We could totally keep talking, but I'm going to move on to the next panel. So I just want to thank you all for participating. Thank you all for engaging and for being here. Thank you all for all the work that you're doing. Best of luck in all your endeavors.
No, thanks for having all of us. A great conversation. To anybody out there who's listening or watching, me personally, if you ever want to talk about these things, just reach out to me. Open to just either listen or help. But this was a great conversation, and hopefully we can do something like this again, or if there are people out there that want to reach out, I'm always available.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Have a good night. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined with Shauna, Bookal, and Vincent Williams to continue these conversations. Donc, on va prendre un petit break, puis on va être de retour avec des nouveaux membres du panel. Au revoir.
All right, thank you.
It's that moment again, the one you dream of every night. La seule chose qui te préoccupe, c'est la gloire, le cheminement de la réussite, of pushing yourself further than ever before. But the true glory is in the shadows. Les sacrifices que tu fais, quand toutes les chances sont contre toi, when you can't push one more second, chase the glory. Visez haut.
Black history is our history. The CFL didn't have much representation in regards to Black officials. Me trying to pass on that information to the younger youth, being proud of their heritage and their culture and where they come from, is something that I try to instill in them every single day.
Welcome back. We now have Shauna Bookal and Vince Williams. Hi.
Hi.
Shauna brings an extensive sports background to her role as the manager of equity, diversity, and inclusion and student experience at the OUA. Prior to her role with the OUA, Shauna spent 3 years with Field Hockey Ontario, most recently serving as their executive director. She's actively involved in the community, sitting on several boards and committees that include the Durham Region Anti-Racism Task Force, Anti-Black Racism, and Black Excellence with Durham Catholic District School Board, as well as a mentor with the Emerging Leader Development Program with the Canadian Olympic Committee, and the Black Female Coach Mentorship Program with the Black Canadian Coach Association. We have quite the extensive resume. I'll briefly kind of share in French as well. And so, Shauna est gestionnaire de l'équité, de la diversité et de l'inclusion et de l'expérience étudiante au SUO. Elle a passé 3 ans à Field Hockey Ontario, plus récemment comme directrice générale. Elle siège à de nombreux conseils d'administration et agit comme mentor dans le cadre des programmes mis sur pied par le Comité olympique canadien et l'Association canadienne des entraîneurs noirs. So welcome, Shauna. I'll then introduce Vince. So from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Vince Williams is a former St. Mary's Husky and professional football player turned sports official and broadcaster. Following his career with legendary coach Larry Utek at St. Mary's University, Vince went on to play 3 seasons of professional football in the Indoor Football League and Arena Football League in the United States. In 2008, Vince transitioned his playing career to on-field football, officiating, and became the first Black Atlantic University sport football official in 2011. 3 years later, he became the first Black football official to officiate in the Vanier Cup. In 2002, Vince was selected as one of 9 participants for the inaugural Canadian Football League, CFL, officiating academy, which aims to increase the number of qualified high-performance officials in Canada. Vince has also forged his path in sports broadcasting and is an active play-by-play announcer covering regular season and conference championships in the AUS and U Sports Championships. He has worked for CTV Atlantic, Rogers Sportsnet, CBC Sports, and CBC Gem. And I'll follow up with the French version real quick. Originaire d'Halifax, Vince Williams est devenu un officiel sportif et un communicateur après avoir joué au football professionnellement pendant 3 ans. L'an dernier, Vince a été sélectionné par l'Académie d'arbitrage de la Ligue canadienne de football qui vise à accroître le nombre d'officiels qualifiés de haute performance au Canada. Vince a travaillé comme descripteur de matchs pour U-Sport et Sport universitaire de l'Atlantique. Il a également travaillé pour CTV Atlantic, Rogers Sportsnet, CBC Sports et CBC Gem. Woo! Y'all have some good resumes. So we are in good company. We'll jump right in again. Not a lot of time, but sounds like both of you have a bit of different backgrounds, but very unique experiences. But where you guys relate is that you both do a lot of work that aim towards representing or increasing representation and diversity in sports, as well as equal opportunity for marginalized communities. And so, Shauna, we'll start with you. Can you briefly tell us a bit about the work that you do and what motivated you to commit to this path?
Yeah, to be honest, what motivated me was there was nobody that looked like me doing this work especially in the amateur sports world here in Canada. Anybody that I wanted to see as a mentor or a leader back then were in the United States, and I didn't have anyone to look up to in Canada. I could relate to everything that those athletes just said in the first panel. Growing up, I was like the only Black, and I never thought that this would be possible for me to make it into a manager or a senior role in amateur sport in Canada, because I didn't see anybody, especially a Black female, in these roles. So when the OUA posted the equity, diversity, and inclusion role, it spoke to me inside because I could relate to what these students were going through. And if I had that opportunity to help, touch, like guide any BIPOC students that want to take the same path, especially Black females, I wanted to do what I could to be that mentor.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking that position, because I know just seeing someone in that role is definitely inspiring younger Black women and BIPOC folks. Vince, when you were an athlete, I know that you were also very aware of the lack of representation, right? Especially in position of authority on the field. And so I'm curious, what made you move from being an athlete to becoming a football official?
Well, like others said, I didn't see anybody, especially in Canada. When I was playing football, either as an amateur, like just growing up, as I've been starting, I played football since I've been 7 years old. So all through playing minor football, high school football, and then university football, I didn't see any officials on the field that looked like me at any level. Most of the representation was in the United States. So most of the people that, I looked up to and was trying to be like, or wanted to be like, or inspired to be, or aspired to be like, were in the United States. They were not in Canada. So for me, making that transition and wanting to be a football official, I knew that if I'm going to forge this path, I'm probably going to be the only one to do so. So it was motivation to me enough to say, okay, this is what I want to do. And with the many of people that I had around me to actually mentor me as a young person in my community, which predominantly is Black, and I'm from one of the richest Black communities here in Nova Scotia. I'm an descendant of Africville, one of the 50 plus Black communities in Nova Scotia. Proud. So my community embraced me and helped raise me, and the people around me were so in regards to inspirational. So I was like, well, if this is something that I can do, maybe someday some young person can see me from my community and want to do the same.
Absolutely. So again, that point of connection, right? Of being in that role to inspire others, to let them know that it is possible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It sounds like, so for both of you, your personal experiences have shed light on the lack of representation and diversity in sports and have led you to take on these roles. I'm curious if you're seeing, if there's anything that you feel that needs significant reform right now in sports. Shauna, we can start with you.
I think it's the biggest thing that I'm seeing, especially because I grew up in the inner cities of Scarborough in the outskirts of the GTA. And when I went through my childhood as an inner city youth, I was presented with great opportunities of, here are some coaching courses, or here are some official courses, just to kind of say, this is how you can stay involved in sport, not just as an athlete, but these are other ways that you can become involved. And when I got into high school, I was introduced to, this is how you become an administrator. This is how you can run an event. This is how you can do things. Nowadays, when I'm seeing BIPOCs and like any really athlete that wants to transition into their post-secondary career after playing, they're not given those opportunities, or they don't have those same opportunities. Or when I'm looking at an intern's resume, or student athletes that want to apply for an internship, like even the skills of how to write a resume, and they don't credit themselves as being student athletes. And they don't see, why would I put me being a student athlete on my resume? They're like, how is that going to help me get a job? And those little small tools that they should be learning. So it's not just teaching them things on the court, on the field, but it's teaching them those skills off the field to help them with that transition when they're done playing. There's athletes that get injured and then they can't play, and then they're just like, what else can I do, or how else can I stay involved in my sport? And these would be these are our future coaches, our future officials, our future administrators. But instead of teaching them at a young age like we used to do 20, 30 years ago, they're starting to learn when they're finished school instead of learning while they're in school, and being able to grow and ask the questions. And if they see Vincent on the sidelines, being able to have an officials course, take it, and then maybe see him in action, and then being able to ask him those questions, or seeing things from his perspective, because that's also another way of having our athletes help us gain respect for the things that we do, or maybe a better understanding of why we do certain things behind the scenes. So if there was that one thing I would say is missing, it's just teaching them, like we do a great job at grassroots, we do a great job in high school, but then when post-secondary comes, it's like we kind of just focus on the playing aspect and not really the off the field leadership, get them ready aspect. So it's just being able to do the two of them combined.
Absolutely. I actually loved your answer. As a therapist, I work with a lot of athletes, and the retirement process is challenging. Yeah. And so I can only imagine that having those tools, and a lot of the time they have the tools, they just don't know it, right? Kind of like you said, like, why aren't they using their student athlete as something on the resume? They've learned a lot of stuff being a student athlete, but they don't know how to transition that and apply that in a different context. So that makes a lot of sense. Vince, what about you? Is there anything that you feel still needs work? You still need to Mhm.
Absolutely. I would definitely echo what Shauna said in regards to, once you get to that pinnacle and what's next, mentoring and seeing somebody that, you may aspire to be like or have that next level. That's when your career is done. Here in Nova Scotia, I think we're starting to look at those things. I can say on a personal view, I've been able to recruit and have former athletes involved with officiating. In regards to the broadcasting side, also that as well, and inspiring and actually recruiting young students that want to be broadcasters, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, whether it's radio, whether it's television, whether it's print, whatever. In regards to journalism itself, being one of the only play-by-play in my role, doing every single sport you can imagine doing, walking in arenas, walking in gyms, and having that person that they don't usually see unless they're watching something on either they're watching a sport in the United States or they're watching at you know um, our national broadcasting companies. Once in a while will give opportunities to one of our more prominent black broadcasters an opportunity when they're actually, pitch hitting for somebody else that's either away on because of family commitments or other commitments as such. But in regards to, having that path and making, have those opportunities for the youth to give them that opportunity that when their career is done as a student athlete. Here in Nova Scotia, I think we're doing a better job open those pathways, but it's up to people like me to actually influence and get out there and do the work and get on the ground and make sure that, not just be in the place, but also motivate the next generation.
Absolutely. I'm kind of going, this question just came to my mind and I want to ask it briefly. Do you think that educating and offering these opportunities to students would keep athletes in Canada instead of some of them who want to go study in the United States and play in the United States?
I very much think so. Shauna, go ahead. You can go
No,
first.
I was just going to say, it's like honestly, in my opinion, I think the more things that we can offer them, like the better chances it is for them to stay here. And like, I know a lot of them will go to the States because there's more opportunities for them that were there. And there's more, and like in the States, they have like specific Black like organizations in sports that they can network with people that look like them. Because again, for the past 3 years, and whenever I tell it to my students or anybody, I'm like, it's the see it, be it, achieve it. I want to see somebody that looks like me. I want to be able to be that person, to have them as a mentor. And then that's going to give me that confidence to achieve it. And I know I can make it to that level because like somebody else has made it there before me and they're paving that way for me on that aspect. We haven't really had that in Canada. And it's like we haven't really had a lot of opportunities outside of the field or the courts for especially for BIPOCs to take some of these courses. And in Ontario, a lot of these courses, and I'm pretty sure in Nova Scotia, they're very expensive. And it's like you need some dollars to pay for some of these courses. So if there's those opportunities to help alleviate the cost and to open those doors, I think we'll see some more BIPOCs that we want to stay in sports and stay in Canada to help grow our system.
Absolutely.
100% agree. I'd say the Canadian Black Journalism Association is doing a pretty good job around the country. I've worked with them in the last 3 years in doing talks via remote in regards to talking to kids, telling them what I do, having panel discussions in regards to there are individuals that look like us, like I said, behind the scenes, in front of the camera, anything in regards to journalism. We've had journalists from across the country, Black journalists from across the country, in every aspect of journalism, reaching out to kids in pretty much every major city in Canada in regards to trying to motivate them and tell them, and we're talking junior high school and high school kids, getting them early, making sure that whatever career path that they're looking for, and they may not be looking for a journalism career path, but introducing it to them and showing them that there are professionals in our own country that are doing the jobs that they may seek to have someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Both of you are extremely passionate about helping the next generation and mentoring them. And I just want to highlight that Asia and Ismail from the previous panel are two recipients of the Black North Initiative Athletes on Track program and bursary. And part of the program, or as part of the program, they are assigned a mentor from which they can learn and be supported by. And so briefly, can you speak a little bit more about the power of mentorship?
Mentorship, like I still have mentors, and it's not like it's something that is a one and done. As you grow in your career, it's like you might get a new mentor that comes into your life at a different stage to help you continue your growth and how to become a better leader. But having somebody there that doesn't tell you what you want to hear, but tells you what you need to hear, even if it's something that you don't want to hear, but you know it's the truth. And sometimes like you have to swallow your pride and understand like I was in the wrong, or yes, I get where like that other person is coming from, or how I can see things in a different picture. It's always nice to have that person there that if they're a call away, a text away, or anything, if I need to vent a situation out, or sometimes it's just like to have that cheerleader that is not your parents, because you know your family will always tell you you did an amazing job and they'll always want to be in your corner, but to have somebody that is outside of your family to be able to see what you're doing and to also recognize it also means something for me. And as I said, like I have a new mentor very quickly, Sandra Levy. Like I was ready to leave sport. And I said it to people, it's very public knowledge. Like there were no Black females in amateur sport. And I don't want to work professional sport. I want to stick amateur and grassroots. And there wasn't a Black female in a senior position. Never thought it would happen. I was ready to leave sport and pack it up and switch careers. And the COC hired Sandra Levy. And here is a Black female who she's Jamaican. My family's Jamaican. So I'm like, that's a sign, like, you know, from that aspect. And at the time I was working with Field Hockey Ontario. And then I found out she was a Field Hockey Ontario, or she played field hockey on the national team. I'm like, that's another sign. That's two signs. And then they always say it comes in three. And then to find out we both share a birthday.
No
so
way.
then it was just like, it's like, you can't go wrong in finding a mentor. And like, I didn't know her. It was a post. It popped up on my feed on LinkedIn. Wow. And it caught my attention, like her face, her picture with her title. And I had to send her a note to say, you have no idea what this announcement means to me. And since that day in 2020, she has been by my side and she's helped me get through some tough times.
Thank you for opening up and sharing about that. That's really touching. And to know that the impact she had on you, right? And to know now the impact that you have and are going to continue to have on other people as their mentors is very beautiful. So thank you for that. Vince, can you briefly speak to the power of mentorship?
Absolutely. I can say the same. I have mentors as well. I can name a few. I mean, they have helped me along the way, especially when I was interning. Paul Jones, Sherman Hamilton, I ran into those two individuals in the bowels of the Scotiabank Center while doing an internship for Sportsnet. And they gave me their personal numbers. I can contact them anytime I have questions in regards to broadcasting. Also, there was an individual out here as well that I contact who now works with the Montreal Canadiens. He's a broadcaster with them. He's a radio broadcaster, and I can talk to him about mentorship in regards to things that I do hockey as well. I'm walking in arenas where I'm the only Black person in there. And when they see me, they're like, "Well, what's this guy doing? What's this all about? Who is this individual?" They don't actually say it to me, but you can feel the vibe when you walk in the arena. But I don't pay no mind. I'm there to do a job. I'm there to work for a university. I'm there to make sure I enhance the game and enhance the student athletes and make sure that the job that I'm doing, I'm there to perform. But I do understand that mentorship is very important in the Black community because we have to continue to uplift each other as we go along.
Well said. Thank you both. I feel like this is actually a great way to kind of come to an end. I'll say this: if you have in one sentence just a takeaway for the audience, we can end on that actually. So Shauna, if you have one sentence or one piece of advice.
Times will get tough, but you can't give up. Like find your mentor, find your inner circle, but don't give up.
Thank you. And Vince?
Persevere, never give up, always. Believe in yourself, believe in your circle, believe in your family and the people that love you, that are supporting you.
Great, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. I think this was a really powerful conversation. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for being a mentor. And hopefully we keep having these conversations. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Donc, merci de vous être joints à nous aujourd'hui. Ceci conclut la série de conversations U-Sport. Même si le mois de l'histoire des Noirs tire à sa fin, n'oublions pas que le travail n'est pas terminé. And thank you for all the panelists who showed up today and engaged in this conversation. This wraps up our U Sports conversation for tonight. Although Black History Month is coming to an end, let's remember that the work doesn't end here. And so thank you and have a great night.